be learning more about those changes today. We are very fortunate to have four awesome, extremely talented speakers that are joining us. I wanted to mention and thank our two affiliate sponsors, Joanne Galen from Orange Coast Title and Matthew Bond from Guarantee Escrow. Just a little housekeeping information. If you guys have any questions, please include them in the question and answer box. And as we get to the end of each panel discussion, we'll have time, hopefully we'll have time to answer those questions. So as I mentioned, I'm from the South Bay Association. I wanted to introduce and mention my fellow committee members that work very hard to make this event happen. They all volunteer their time. Sabina Birkenfeld and Ben Larson, Lillian Wang, Melissa Okabe, and Susan Karn. And this event marks one of the first times that we have united our efforts with three other realtor associations from the Southern California area. Today, we have over 400 real estate professionals participating in our symposium. Obviously, this is a very hot topic. Whoever thought people would get so excited by taxes? I'm sure in their career, Jeffrey and Mike have met a few folks that got excited over taxes. But not to digress, we'll get into that. I am very pleased to introduce Shun Zhang from the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors Association. Shun is the chairperson representing their global committee. And from Arcadia Association of Realtors, we have Kelly Tran, and she is also their global committee chairperson. In addition, we have Yami Martinez. She's representing Orange Coast Realtors Global Alliance Committee as their chairperson, along with Bob Hartman, who is their vice chair. So without further ado, Kelly will introduce our first two guests.
Yes, hi, I'm Kelly Tran with the Arcadia Association. I am chairperson this year for the Global Committee. Welcome, everyone. And I am here to introduce our first speaker, Jeff Prang.
But hold on one sec. Can we have our two affiliates speak really quickly?
Sure,
So
no problem.
Matthew and Joanne.
Hi guys, I'm Joanne Gallen with Orange Coast Title. I'll make this quick because I know this is going to be a great panel here or information. My title tip for you guys today is as soon as you get your listing, get the prelim started. Don't be like the old days and wait until it's in escrow. Get that few day jump because obviously things are going quickly, but get that prelim started. Call your title rep, get that prelim started. It'll really be to your advantage. And also I have these great California buyer guides, Guide to Title and Escrow. It's a wonderful booklet to give to your new buyers. Feel free to contact me if you'd like to get a copy of it. And we also have it online as well. Thanks guys and have a great class.
Thank you.
Thanks guys, thank you.
Is Matthew there?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Bond. I'm an escrow assistant at Guarantee Escrow. And I guess Joanne did her title tip. I'll do my escrow tip. Order your city reports. I've seen some city reports, especially here in LA, take a minimum of 6 weeks to actually get into your hands. So if you have a 30-day escrow and it takes 6 weeks to get your city report, it's going to cause some delay. So make sure you get that. We service the LA County area. We've been servicing this area for about 17 years. This year we have 4 offices, service clients and any need necessary. We've been busy as ever. And we're one of 3 escrow companies in California vetted to do Bitcoin transactions. So if you have clients who got lucky with some Bitcoin or got in early and don't know exactly what to do with it and want to turn it into real estate, more than happy to assist them in any way we can. So once again, my name is Matthew Bond with Guarantee Escrow.
Thank you, Matthew. Sorry about that, Kelly. Please proceed.
No problem. Okay, so my first speaker, Jeff Prang, who is a Los Angeles County Assessor. Jeff Prang was elected in 2014 as the 27th Assessor for the County of Los Angeles and re-elected in 2018. Raised in Warren, Michigan, Assessor Prang is a graduate of Michigan State University. After graduation, Mr. Prang located to California, where he served nearly 18 years as a council member for the city of West Hollywood, including 4 terms as mayor, among many other positions in the public sector. Upon taking office in 2014 as the Los Angeles County Assessor, Mr. Prang implemented sweeping reforms to ensure that the strictest ethical guidelines rooted in fairness, accuracy, and integrity would be adhered to his office. Assessor Prang is a State Board of Equalization licensed appraiser and administers the largest office of its kind in the nation with 1,200 employees that provides the foundation for a property tax system that generates over $17 billion annually.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate that kind introduction. I want to thank you for inviting me to be on this panel today. I especially want to thank David Potter and Julie Tran for giving me this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about Proposition 19, and pleased that we were able to put together the global committees from a number of associations, which I've had the pleasure of speaking with in the past. Also want to acknowledge my friend, Councilmember Paul Chung from Arcadia. Just a couple of notes. I did want to state for the record, I don't know how many of you know this, but my very first job that I got right out of college at Michigan State was as a licensed realtor with a RE/MAX affiliate in Michigan, near where I grew up. And that experience has proven to be a very invaluable resource for me as I work alongside with colleagues and friends in the real estate business. However, today I'm going to be talking about Prop 19, which, as you know, was approved by the voters last November. Portions of the measure are already in effect and it's already having a significant impact statewide. So just a couple quick notes before I go there. For anybody who I'm seeing or who's listening to me for the first time, I just want to let you know I'm one of 3 countywide elected officials, the least well-known of the 3. The other 2 are much better known than me, and that's the district attorney and the sheriff. Also, to offer my probably well-renowned tagline for those who don't know this, I don't collect taxes. The tax collector is the one who collects taxes. We just do assessments. And in addition to being the largest local assessment agency in the United States, we're responsible for valuing over 2.5 million real property parcels and business assessments, which last year were valued at $1.8 trillion. So talking about Prop 19, one of the challenges that assessors are facing today is the fact that Proposition 19 was placed on the ballot, in my view, with insufficient discussion, and it was rushed through at the very end of the legislative session. It did not include property tax and property assessment administrators in the designing of the bill, and in the drafting of the bill. As a result, there are numerous ambiguities and deficiencies in the measure's language that are going to have to be addressed before I and the other 57 assessors statewide can administer it properly. There are significant legal and administrative voids in the measure that if these are not addressed, they're going to cause uncertainty, confusion, and quite frankly, it's going to cause chaos in the real estate market. So, as you probably all know, and some of you have heard this presentation before, Prop 19 has 2 major components. First, it allows homeowners who are over 55, severely disabled, or the victims of a natural disaster like a fire or flood to transfer their property tax base with them when they sell their home and purchase a new one. It essentially makes your property tax basis portable. This component makes a number of positive changes from the previous law as it affects seniors. It will allow eligible homeowners to transfer their assessed value and their property tax basis anywhere in the state, unlike the previous law, which limited transfers to 10 other counties. It will also allow your assessed value to be transferred to a more expensive home, unlike the previous law, which limited transfers to a home of equal or lesser value. Also, the number of times that you can transfer that assessment has been increased to 3. It was 1 under the previous law. This part of the measure goes into effect next week on April 1st. And the component of Prop 19, which is really causing a lot of consternation, is that deals with intergenerational transfers. And this component was probably the part that wasn't very well publicized during the campaign for the adoption of Prop 19. And to the degree it focused on a very narrow element, dealing with the super rich, essentially. So what, what we're learning is that Prop 19, in order to provide these additional benefits to seniors, which will have a deleterious impact on property tax revenues, it was decided to reduce the property tax benefits that previously were afforded to families through the parent to child and grandparent to grandchild exclusion. Where this comes from, many of you may recall about a year or so ago, the LA Times did a feature story on a home in Malibu owned by the children of the late actor Lloyd Bridges. They had owned the home for a very long time. It had a $5,000 annual tax bill. But when the Lloyd Bridges children inherited it, they were able to lease that home for about $15,000 to $20,000 a month. And a lot of people thought that was not really the intent of the parent to child exclusion. It was not intended to keep low taxes so that you could get a windfall commercial revenue stream. It was intended to keep the cherished family home in the family. Under this previous law, which was called Proposition 58, if you're a parent, you were allowed to give your property to your children. That home could be of any value, and its assessed value could be inherited by your children without the property being reassessed, even if the children don't occupy the property. Prop 58 also allowed you to give up to $1 million in additional property to your children without reassessment, such as a rental property or commercial property. However, as of February 16th, this component of Prop 19 went into effect, and it made significant changes to the law, effectively repealing Props 58 and 193, which are otherwise known as the parent to child and grandparent to grandchild transfer. In effect, it reduces the property tax benefits that you used to be able to give to your kids. To qualify for Prop 19, you have to meet a couple of elements. One is that the property that you're giving to your children must be your primary residence and only your primary residence. No other property now qualifies under the new law. Secondly, the child inheriting the property must make that property their residence within 1 year of the transfer. They also must file for homeowner's exemption within 1 year. Also, depending on the value of your home, and the rule of thumb is if the home is valued at $1 million or more, your children will get a tax increase. They will get a blended tax increase of the inherited value plus a base year assessment based on that value of the property, which is over $1 million. So rule of thumb, if the home's over $1 million, your kids are going to get a tax increase when they inherit your property. As I mentioned earlier, there was a trade-off in the drafting of Prop 19. Tax benefits for seniors and the disabled were expanded, but tax benefits for those in the property under the children were reduced. And I think that has somewhat of a regressive impact on working families and middle-income families who have modest real estate holdings that they were hoping to transfer to their children to provide some sort of a financial foundation to build generational wealth for their kids and their heirs. This year, I'm serving as the chairman of the California Assessors Association Legislative Committee. And all I can tell you at this time that we are working to try to get legislation introduced that will help clarify what Prop 19 means. As I mentioned previously, there's many deficiencies and ambiguities. Right now, there is a bill, Senate Bill 539, which addresses a very small portion of what is needed, but the bulk of the measure is not yet in a legislative bill. And without it, county assessors and the Board of Equalization are going to be without any type of statutory guidelines on how to implement this measure. So many of you are going to ask questions about what happens if I bought my house, sold my home in January, and I buy a new one in May, which law applies? The answer today is we don't know. What happens if I'm going to inherit my mother's house, but she moves into memory care a couple of years before she dies? The law suggests that we're going to have to reassess that home because the law requires it to be her primary residence. And if she's in a home, it's not. I don't think that was the intent, but that's what the law says, and that needs to be clarified through legislation. There's also a bill, Senate Bill 668, which would extend the implementation by a couple of years. While I support that concept, I'm not sure that a piece of legislation can do that because Prop 19 is a constitutional amendment and you cannot amend constitutional amendments by legislation. It has to be done by a vote of the people. But I'm hoping there might be some way to get us there. And finally, we've created on my website a special page dedicated to information, resources, and tools to help you with Proposition 19. We have an exclusion calculator, which if you're giving your property to your kids, and it's over $1 million, this calculator will help you to determine what the new tax rate is. We're developing another one to deal with base year transfers. And there's also a webinar on there that where we have estate planning experts and CPAs to help provide additional information on the impacts of Prop 19 on how they deal with not only property taxes, but other taxes. And all that can be found on my website at assessor.lacounty.gov. And lastly, if you're not already subscribing to my Realtor newsletter, you can do that on my website as well. And we'll send you regular information about Prop 19 and other things that we think will help you be a better professional real estate expert, and we'll have a lot of information you can share with your clients. So that concludes my prepared comments for today, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, well, Jeffrey, I have a couple questions on that we prepared for you, but I see a bunch of interesting questions coming in. But let's hit on a couple of the ones that people are probably most curious about. What is the process for someone over 55 and transferring their property tax to a new primary residence?
So you have to fill out you'll have to fill out a Prop 19 starting on the 1st. You'll have to fill out a Proposition 19 form, and I believe that's the administrative mechanism that's required. Robert Izazaki is an attorney and a special assistant in my office, who's my Prop 19 in the weeds expert. Robert, is there anything else we need to do other than submit that form?
No, I believe it's just the form, and you would submit it to the county assessor's office that has jurisdiction over the replacement property where you're trying to transfer the base year value.
Excellent. Now, can a person buy a new house first and then sell their original house and qualify for the protected tax base?
I believe the answer to that is yes. That's correct, right, Robert?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
And do you know how much time they have to purchase a new place after selling?
2 years.
2 years?
2 years.
Okay. We'll go to the audience real quick. Rosie Riera asks, do you see many LA homeowners selling and moving out of the state compared to people purchasing properties and moving to the state?
I don't have any information to that effect. I could study that, but I'm not. It's not a question I've asked before. But there are other studies we've seen about. And I think in LA County, the population is remaining relatively stable, which means that it's not growing, which means people are leaving the county. Whether they're going to other states or not, I don't know. But not as many people are staying in LA County. They may be moving to Riverside, San Bernardino, or Texas. But I'd have to do more research on that.
Okay, and Swan Wendy can ask, would we be able to apply properties for a greater value? Does this mean seniors can transfer the property tax base if they purchase a property of lower value?
So under Prop 19, a senior who's defined as anyone who's 55 or older or the disabled can purchase a home of any value and transfer their tax base with them. So if you have a 1990 tax base, you could buy a home anywhere in any county in the state. If you purchase a home where the fair market value of the new home exceeds the current fair market value of the home you're selling, then you will receive a partial reassessment for that value of the new home, which is over $1 million. And so you'll have a new tax rate. It will be higher. It will not be as high as the market-based tax rate, but it will be higher than the one that you're leaving. And that we will, as I said, we will soon have a base transfer tax calculator on our website, probably in the next 2 weeks, that will allow you to just enter the address or the assessor's identification number and the value of the home, and it will tell you what the new tax base will be.
Excellent. Tina Vo asks, can a mother add a daughter, her name to the grant deed as joint tenants if the daughter's not living at home with her now? But
Yes, they can. You would have to do a Proposition 19 form. Robert, is there anything else that is required of that? The daughter does not have to live in the home, I don't believe.
I believe that's one of the things that we're seeking clarification on, because the general requirement is that when the interest is transferred, the child is supposed to live in the residence and claim homeowner's exemption. But again, there are a lot of ambiguities, and I believe that's one we're seeking clarification.
Forgive me, I'm confusing Proposition 58, which did not allow that. But yes, under the terms of a home that you would inherit from your parents, even if you're going to live there with them, or if they transfer it to you while they're still living, the eligibility requires that home must be the primary residence of your parent, and it must become your residence within 12 months. There's no wiggle room on those. Those are pretty straightforward.
And then how long are the heirs required to live in the property after receiving the Prop 19 benefits?
They have to live in that property continuously. There is no expiration date. The moment that one of the heirs is not living in that property will be reassessed to market value. There are no exceptions to my knowledge.
And is it possible, if they're not children or grandchildren, like let's say someone didn't have children, can a niece or nephew inherit a property?
No, the families are clearly defined. It can only be a parent to a child, or in some cases, a grandparent to a grandchild. No other family relationships are qualified.
And can you briefly touch upon how Proposition 19 affects a house if it's in a trust?
So it should, if you think of it this way, a trust is really a set of instructions as to what will happen at the point of a transfer. When you put your property into a trust, no transfer is taking place. If you're a parent and you put your property into a trust in your kid's name, when you pass, that's when the change of ownership occurs. And that's what we would recognize as the change of ownership. So if you are in a trust right now and you have you pass away suddenly in June, we would record that as a change in ownership. Your child in the trust would inherit that property, and we would determine whether or not it needs to be reassessed or not.
Interesting. I'm going to take one more question from the audience, and then we're going to introduce Paul. And I believe Paul actually may have a couple questions for you. But Rosie asked another question. A parent with multiple children and owning multiple rental properties, can each of the children move into the inherited rental properties, declare them primary residents after the death of the parents as per Prop 19, or only one of the siblings can qualify? I think you touched on this. But...
So the only property that you can leave to your children to get the tax base is your primary residence. Nothing else qualifies. So if all those additional properties that you own, that your kids inherit, all of those will be reassessed to market value. The only one that they can get the tax base is the one that you live in, and then they must live in it within 1 year in order to qualify. There was a big challenge in that the law, the way it's written, says, let's say you have 3 kids and you pass away, the law, the way it's written, suggests that all 3 children have to live in the property. I think that's absurd. Nobody intended that, but that's what it says. And so that's one of the things we're seeking clarification legislation for, to be very clear that that's not what the intent was. The Board of Equalization did issue a regulatory interpretation that gave guidance to assessors that says as long as one child moves in, we will accept that as satisfying the terms of Prop 19. We still would like the legislation to clarify that that's indeed what it says.
I think that would be very entertaining if someone had 3 or 4 kids and they all had to live together.
Family reunification.
All right, Kelly, let's introduce Paul. And I think Paul will go ahead and ask a couple quick questions before he starts.
We're fortunate to have Paul Cheng join us from the law offices of Paul Cheng and Associates, where he is an attorney specializing in business, excuse me, real estate and immigration law. Paul graduated from UCLA and Southwestern Law School with a JD degree. I'm sorry. Paul graduated from UCLA and Southwestern Law School with a JD degree. He is a longtime resident of Arcadia. He is currently our council member representing the 4th District for the city of Arcadia. I'm sorry, I have allergies. Paul Chang, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. I'd rather have you cough than laugh at me, so it's all good. Don't worry. Actually, the questions that I had for Mr. Prang were answered that I had because there were 6 questions that were presented over to me. But I did want to say one thing about Jeffrey Prang, is that there's always a tendency actually to not think about the San Gabriel Valley. It's obviously not as sexy as some other parts of Los Angeles County. I think it's wonderful. But Jeffrey Prang has always been to our events. I understand that, you know, some people may not think that it matters, but it actually really matters to me. It's not always easy to get elected officials that are over large areas to be able to come. And Jeffrey Prang recently was at one event, and he was so kind because he did something that very rarely an elected official that I know of has ever done. He came up to me, and, you know, because he could tell I was kind of just helping out with the organization. It was getting disorganized. And he said, "May I leave?" How many of you have been at an event where an elected comes, they speak, and they disappear? And the next thing you know, you call their name again, and they're no longer around. That really made an impact on me. It touched me because it shows that he took the time to think about, although that night, I'm sure he had a lot of other events, to actually be considerate. And so, you know, Jeffrey, thank you so much for being considerate, for remembering the San Gabriel Valley, because it's such a beautiful part of Los Angeles, and just for serving all of us. So I will see you at your next event, which actually I think you're going to be jumping over to the next event, and I'll see you with Cindy Wu.
Thank you, Paul. Very kind. It's great to be with all of you. Stay safe. See you soon.
All right. Well, I am, you know, I was kind of racking my head about how would I be different from other people. You know, I did have a little bit of a glitch this morning, and let me just, how do I, oh, from beginning, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen soon. I'm actually on a, using my hotspot because we had a little bit of an issue. Let me just see. Can you guys be able to see my screen? November 3rd, 2020 Proposition 19, lessons learned, transfer concerns?
Yes.
Can you guys? Okay, great. And also thank you so much just for coming today. The difficulty I had was, where do I jump in? I mean, we have the tax assessor coming, which is very difficult to get, you know, to obviously have him come and explain the law. We have a CPA, we have all of these really good people. How do I provide value? And what I wanted to do was kind of go over Proposition 19 from a political point of view, in terms of understanding how Prop 19 came into being and actually how it won. I actually believe that Proposition 19, out of all the propositions, was the most well-run campaign. And I'm going to be explaining all of that. And some of it will be overlap with what Jeffrey Prang said, but you know, those areas I'm going to go fairly fast. So, all right, very quickly, this presentation, general educational purposes, please don't rely on it. You know, don't really, if you want legal advice or taxation advice, find that person. Yes, I am an elected official with the city of Arcadia. No, I do not represent the city of Arcadia for purposes of this presentation. Yes, I will have slides from the city of Arcadia, but it's meant for you to understand issues of taxation. I will be very honest with you. This is the first time I have ever read cover to cover all of the propositions, cover to cover. And I did so because I wanted to be able to explain it in both English and Chinese to my community. And I can be able to tell you that because of that, I think I have a very unique perspective on the quote unquote proposition process that I would like to share with you. But also the goal, however, is to understand Proposition 19 and the consequences of reassessment. I believe that the voting process remains, or the proposition process remains very confusing. The laws are very long, very long. No one takes the time to read it. The summaries are written by elected officials that belong to a political party. And currently in California, there is really only one political party. We are what is considered a supermajority in the state of California. And what that means is that both houses, if you can consider them houses, the Assembly and the State Senate, are dominated by one political party, which is the Democratic Party. It's 2/3, actually, it's very powerful. And the governor, as well as all of the constitutional officers, I believe that there are 7, are all dominated by only one political party. And so the interesting issue becomes that the only way to safeguard our political process is for one political party to guard itself. Essentially, this happens in other states as well. There are other states that are dominated by the Republican Party as a supermajority, and the only people that can control themselves are not the other political party, which essentially is what's called a divided government. Some people have considered it almost a communist philosophy where essentially one party controls all legislation. It's a very unique perspective, but it's one that we have to be intellectually honest about. Why? Because of the fact that many of the laws are going to seem to be very slanted. But I'm not here to essentially talk about political philosophy as much as it is for you to understand the proposition process as it related to Proposition 19. Few people read past the summaries. So there is a summary page. It is written by an elected official that belongs to one political party, and that elected official writes a summary, and that summary is going to be slanted. So we have to be intellectually honest. Judges rarely allow for amendments to the summaries. So I was actually part of the group that opposed Proposition 16. Proposition 16 essentially was a slam dunk. It was supposed to be passed, slam dunk. And so there were about 10 families here in Southern California that really fought against Proposition 16. Now, I was not a part of the team that brought essentially an appeal to the state court, but I tracked it very heavily. I was more on going out there, protesting, getting the information out. And what I realized was a summary that is written will never be amended if the summary cites to a portion of the actual proposition that's going to be brought, because then it is not fraudulent nor confusing. So I just want to share that with you based upon my personal experience, because I think it's very interesting how Proposition 19 was brought, and I think it was a very well-run campaign. And I believe if the California Association of Realtors or Realtors in general are going to be bringing up propositions in the future, they should follow Proposition 19 and how it was done. Let's see, next. Very quickly, this is just an example. If you want to go back to the voter information guide, page 8 through 13 is the summary written by a politician. I've always said it may not be accurate. It does provide for one argument support, one argument against, but then the arguments are arguments. The propositions, if you look, were pages 16 through 77. Nobody really took the time to read through all the propositions apart from the people that wrote it. I actually really appreciate what Jeffrey Prang said earlier, in the sense that he found the law to be very difficult to understand. I mean, let's just be very frank about that. And there's nothing wrong about that. I actually felt that that was an intellectually stimulating and honest statement that was made, and that more clarification is needed. But very few people would read the proposition. They essentially read page 8 through 13. We're getting to proposition 19. Don't stress. I see David Potter. He's like, oh my God, what is going on? It's definitely not what I thought. Okay, we're getting there.
You're
All
good,
right,
no
so-
worries.
The official information guide is different from the actual proposed laws. It's a summary. Summaries are written by people. There is something that's very good in the information guide. It is called analysis by the legislative analyst. Those are very good. Those are very objective. Those are not political, but they are buried in the middle of the book. It is like so hard to find that you would have to go through all the stuff to find whoever wrote this. And it is a great opportunity for you to learn about future propositions, because they essentially provide objective commentary and analysis on what's good and what's bad. And frankly, in learning about Proposition 19 today, many of the elected officials don't even read the summaries, don't even really read the propositions because they're difficult to understand. We go straight to the analysis by the legislative analyst because it tells you the consequences if the law is passed, and it gives you the background, and it is not written by a politician. Okay, so if you want to read the actual text of the law, you basically go here. And so this is kind of the political process. Okay, there were three types of issues on the ballot: initiatives, referendums, and constitutional amendments. Okay, there are three types that we needed to vote on: initiative, referendums, and constitutional amendments. What's an initiative? An initiative is where residents, US citizens in California get together and they say, we want to pass a law. Now, there have been some crazy, I think there was one initiative, it was either related to like horses or cows. So we've seen some crazy initiatives over the years. But the great thing about an initiative is that you don't need your elected officials to pass it. Meaning you can bring it at, say, you know what, we have a supermajority, they don't care about X, but as citizens, we care about it. Or our elected officials are too busy. They don't want to look at X. Therefore, we need to bring it. So you need 623,212 people to get together, and the constitutional amendment, you need 997,139 people for a constitutional amendment. So again, you need a lesser degree if you want to bring your own law, but if you want a constitutional amendment, and basically someone would say, well, what's the difference between regular law and constitutional amendment? Well, a regular law, basically it's once this is in, the legislature can be able to override it. A constitutional amendment means that it needs to be brought to a vote of the people. So if you are going to have a constitutional amendment, actually, Jeffrey Prang was saying that earlier, which I thought was actually very interesting too. It's very rare to have somebody intellectually speak about real rules and regulations. Then you would actually need a vote of the people to overturn an initiative statute. So once you get this initiative statute in play and the vote of the people say, yes, then you need the vote of the people then to say no. All right. So what is a referendum? Basically, a referendum is a law that's passed, but the vote of the people say, we don't want that law. We want the California voters to disagree with the legislature. So the move was, if Proposition 16, if you remember, essentially was a proposition to allow for race-based decisions as a factor or consideration in governmental contracts and going to college, right? So that's kind of a quick and dirty Proposition 16. But the move was, well, if that was going to pass, or any law was going to pass, we would be looking at a referendum to see how we can be able to come back. I'm not sure Proposition 16, we could have done a referendum, but just to let you know, that's what a referendum is. Some law that was passed, but we need to come back and say, California voters need to come back and say no. The difference between an initiative, it allows citizens to propose a new statute or constitutional amendment. A referendum allows citizens to refer a law that passed the legislature to the ballot for voters to decide whether to uphold or repeal the law. Now, what is a constitutional amendment? Because that's what Proposition 19 is. A constitutional amendment is different from regular law. Regular law is, it passes, if you see a law that says SB number, it starts off from the Senate. If you see AB, that means it starts off from the Assembly. So it'll be like AB number. It starts off from the Assembly. If it starts off from the Assembly, one side makes all the changes, then it jumps over to the Senate. That side makes their changes. Hopefully they coincide. If not, they meet and confer with each other. Then it goes to the governor. Then he can decide, rubber stamp it, or send it back and say, I don't like it. I'd like you to make some changes in it. So what is a constitutional amendment? A constitutional amendment essentially takes the governor out of the picture. The Constitution is what really rules in California. It rules over everything. And so what happens is that you need a supermajority, which is 2/3 of each legislature and our Senate to say yes. Then it bypasses the governor because it's constitutional amendment, and it goes straight to the people for a majority vote. So that is what Proposition 19 is. So summary, most serious consequence, therefore you need 2/3 of each house, I may not be saying it correctly, of each house in California, a state Senate and the Assembly, plus a majority of voters, then it becomes law. Very quickly, how to run a good campaign. A lot of realtors, a lot of people in the real estate industry are like, man, they won handedly. In my opinion, it was good. But then there are these consequences. So it's like, wait a minute, why is everybody so freaked out about Proposition 19 if it passed, right? If it's so bad, why do we have all of these Zoom lectures on it? Well, I can be able to tell you that Proposition 19, whether or not you like it or not, they ran a very good campaign. You get all sides in a room. You give them a piece of your pie. You say, you know what? Fire, police, here you go. Schools, here you go. Cities, here you go. People that are elderly, here you go. People that have wildfire issues, here you go. People that are handicapped, here you go. Very smart, very smart. Then you have them all come out and support you. Who can fight against first responders? I know I can. I love first responders. If someone's in a wheelchair, you can't hate them. You just don't really want to hate them, obviously, right? So you link, and then also you link up recent news events to support. So a lot of the campaigning was, look at the fires. We're helping people in the fires. Look at the elderly. We're helping the elderly. So then everybody is connected with those that they would like to help, but they don't know how to help. So they help them through the Proposition 19, right? You've always wanted to help somebody that was elderly. You're not going to be doing it. So you do it through Proposition 19. You've always wanted to do a lunch for the first responders, right? But you didn't do it. So therefore, how do you do it? You help them through Proposition 19. You never talk about the negative parts of your proposition. So some people consider the transfer tax, that was a huge negative part, huge, but they never talked about it. And when you don't talk about it, then the people that do, because nobody reads the propositions, they look crazy. They look like malcontents. They stand on the street corner and they say, what's going on? What's going on? But then when people look at the actual summary, the summary never talked about the transfer tax, never. Not even, there was one sentence that was very ambiguous. Nobody could understand it. What does that mean? You run a positive campaign. You don't hate on other people. You let other people hate on you. You being first responders, you being elderly, you being people that have been affected by the wildfires, you being people that have difficulties in life. Those are the people that are hated on when the other person hates on you. And that's how you win a campaign. That's how you win a campaign. What is a property tax? A property tax essentially is what you pay to LA County, and it's usually 1%. It can go up 2% per year, depending on inflation, right? Nobody likes to be reassessed. What does that mean? That means that your property tax isn't assessed on a prior value. It could be assessed on a higher value. And that's very important for people to understand why there's this kind of fear. It's all about reassessment, right? If you can pay taxes on $100,000, 1%, would you want to be reassessed at $5 million? Nobody wants to be reassessed on $5 million, right? They would rather be assessed on $100,000. And the great thing I think about LA County that I believe Jeffrey Prang has really tried to enforce is that there's a finality of taxes. They're not going to run back 5 or 6 years and chase you down. Every year you pay the tax, there's finality. I pay based upon what LA County tells me to pay, right? You know, it's kind of funny. It's that there's like this video that I see when you pay taxes to the IRS. You're like, I don't understand how to pay taxes. And the IRS says, well, you owe me. And you say, how much? And they tell you to guess. They're like, you guess how much you owe us, right? And 5 years later, I'm going to come back and ding you. And you're like, but can you just help me? Can you kind of give me an estimate? They say, yeah, just go to the tax code, the huge tax code. But the great thing I believe about property tax, it creates finality, meaning here you go, tax assessor, you tell me how much to pay. Tax assessor takes the money. They don't run back 5 years later and say, oh, you know what? You're like a really bad person. You paid us what we said you owed us, right? But actually, you owe us more. So a lot of people really like the finality of the property tax versus, for example, a federal tax. So here is why cities supported Proposition 19. Many residents make the following statement. I pay so much in property taxes. Why do we not have enough money in our city? Residents do not realize that the majority of property taxes go to schools, counties, and special districts. Your city, for example, Arcadia, only gets 9.5% of your property tax. So if you look here in the city of Arcadia, the one that gets it's reversed. Who gets the most property tax? It's actually the county. The county of Los Angeles gets the most property tax. If you look, the city of Arcadia, the city itself gets 9.6 cents for every dollar that you give. Everything else is taken away from us. It's all gone. It doesn't come to us. So Here's another pie chart for you to see, right? If I'm kind of just doing the ones that you can see, the biggest person that gets your property tax, our property taxes, are our school districts. The next one is the County of Los Angeles. They eat up the second most. The city is right here. So if you look, it's a little tiny one, right? The reason why it got much bigger versus the prior one is that I just took out all the ones that you may not be familiar with. So you are familiar with school districts. You are familiar with school district. Now, if you look, what is this 57%? After Proposition 13 was passed, the property tax amount that went into the county period fell by 57%. 57%. So this pie, everybody fell 57%. So it was very significant. Here's another graph. If you have a $2 million property and there are property taxes each year of $20,000, the city of Arcadia gets from your home $1,920. So you need us as a city council to manage $1,920 of your property, essentially, multiplied by the number of homes. And that is the reason why many local jurisdictions supported Proposition 19. What is Proposition 19? Very quickly, it's currently, if the person is 55 or disabled, they can transfer the value of our home to another home in the same county without increasing the property tax. You could transfer it to different counties if they have the same rule and if there was retroactivity and benefit between both. So a lot of people before Prop 19, they would go from LA County to San Diego because it was the same rules and there was reciprocity and people were okay with each other. The impact is clear. If approved by voters, and it was approved, California homeowners who are 55 or older can purchase a new home and keep their current property tax assessment at the same level or a reduced rate, depending on the value of the new house, but really they can get a more expensive home without getting reassessed. Remember I said earlier, reassessment is the bad word, is the scary word. Because if you're reassessed at a higher value, you pay a higher tax, the 1%, right? However, in this one, now they can do it up to 3 times during their lifetime. So before, it's just one time, typically within the same county. In California, I believe that there are I think there are 57 counties in California, if I'm not, I think it's 57, but only 10 of those counties allowed for this type of situation, and not every county allowed for reciprocity. So LA would go to San Diego, people from San Diego would retire in LA, that was allowed, but you had to have a reciprocity with another county that had the same rule. Okay, so the current law, which obviously is no longer the current law, allows for properties to pass from parent to child, grandparent down, et cetera. It was called the intra-family transfer tax-free. So let's say that you wanted to give, you wanted to pass it on to your son, right? You purchased the home at $500,000. Like in Arcadia, there are homes that were purchased for $150,000. Very, very low. Now they're at $2 million to $3 million. Well, that's a big nut to crack. That is a big nut to crack if you're going to be giving it to somebody that's in their 30s. But you know what? Pre-Prop 19, you could just pass it to them and they would be taxed at the same amount as what you held it at. So the impact is clear. This would no longer be available if not a primary residence. So we're going to talk about the primary residence issue. I was a little bit confused about the $1 million exemption just because I believe the exemption is more than $1 million. David, I don't know if you agree. It's base year plus $1 million, but it also shows that our elected officials and the county assessor does have an opinion of it that attorneys don't necessarily have. And I've actually heard of a third version. So, this is all things that we have to be careful of. So Californians who are 55 and older, disabled or displaced by fires, could carry their existing lower property tax rates to new homes anywhere in the state. So it really supports buying and selling of real estate up to 3 times in one's lifetime. It will create more movement. You do in terms of purchasing real estate. I think there was a bar graph that I've seen, but really 55 years and older, people they may move once, if at all. They're pretty much set because their income really after 55 becomes static or gets close to zero. And so people don't move when they don't have income. Well, people are going to move now. If their property tax, essentially you can sell your home, go to another home, move your property tax, and have it, not have it be reassessed. So people then aren't, they're almost trading apples for apples, although it's apples and oranges. So this is definitely going to help the real estate industry in terms of allowing people to move more frequently. Because again, on the bar graph that I saw, it literally around 60, it just shrinks. Although most people think people at 60 have the most money, but people at 60 aren't, moving from, Santa Barbara County down to LA County, down to San Diego, where if you're younger, really the most purchases and sales are around between 35 to 45, right? They're moving, right? They're hunting for new jobs. They're going from place to place. They're upgrading from condos to single family homes. And then their goal is to buy an apartment complex or, commercial property. So it's a big difference now. The quick arguments in favor, it was supported by real estate organizations, allows for transfer of tax to higher priced homes. It helps older residents and it increases the quantity of sales. I do believe that's going to happen, which I think is a very positive thing for the real estate industry. The arguments against, any tax is a bad tax. And the best tool to pass property to children without a tax is the previous law, right? That was the best argument that they could have come up with. I personally believe, again, that this came as a very outlier argument, meaning it just seemed to be like crazy people that were against taxes, right? And so that, I believe that they could have argued it better. The only party that I remember was the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. That was the only one that came out. And I believe that because they have a singular purpose, their message was not as clear. While on the other hand, here are the key players: California Realtors Association, California Professional Firefighters, right? Local government came out, business came out, real estate groups came out. If they had a poodle group, cute poodle group, they would come out too. They got a slice of the pie. Very intelligent. Proposition 19 was, in my opinion, one of the most intelligent. Forget about the statements that were made earlier. Jeffrey Prang was very honest, confusing law, etc. I'm talking about the way the campaign was run. I thought it was an excellent, well-run campaign, avoided the negativity, and made the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association seem like an outlier. Although I believe a majority of Californians don't want to pay taxes, they still made the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association seem like that they were crazies. Okay, the very good. Let's talk about the very good very quickly again. This is how I want to summarize it to you. Beginning April 1st, 2021, Proposition 19, and then my PowerPoint is always available to people. Use it, knock yourself out. Proposition 19 will expand this current tax benefit by allowing homeowners age 55 and older, homeowners with severe disabilities, and homeowners whose residences have been substantially damaged by wildfires or natural disasters to preserve the original property tax basis from their current home when purchasing another home in the state of California, regardless of location or value of the replacement primary residence. This type of transfer may be done 3 times, and homeowners have 2 years to sell their current home and buy a new one. So it's not like you're like, I'm going to sell it, right? And I got to immediately move. They can actually sell it, think about it, ponder it, and then go 2 years later to purchase another home and move their assessment value. Very cool, very cool. The not so good, right? That's why we're here. The second part of the measure eliminates the ability to for a home to pass from a deceased parent to a child or a grandchild without reassessing the home value unless it is the child or grandchild's primary residence. Primary residence. There is going to be a $1 million that Mr. Prang discussed, and I have a slightly different take on it. Thus, if the child or grandchild, this is the first issue. If the child or grandchild doesn't live in the inherited home, you're going to be reassessed. You need to have that ingrained in your head. Meaning, if you're going to pass on a property and you are worried about LA County or any county reassessing your property value, you got to tell your client, move into that property. That's got to be your primary residence. Now, the definition of primary residence, I should have looked up. You know, a person can have multiple residences, right? So you can have a place in Santa Barbara, you can have a place, you know, in San Bernardino, right? But there is only one primary residence. And that's somewhat of an ambiguity that I should have researched. It's my fault because it's something that just came in my head right now. But a person can have only one primary residence, okay? Again, this is a quick summary. Previously, the law provided that property transfers between parents and children, which includes property inherited by children from their grandparents, where both parents are deceased, as well as subsequent inheritance of the same property by the next generation. So you can have a person that purchased it in 1905, pass, and still never reassessed, all right? As well as subsequent inheritance of the same property by the next generation are not considered a change of ownership. This word change of ownership, it's a key word for the tax assessor. So that's something that you have to keep in mind too, because they'll use certain terms, you know, just like anybody in any industry, it's not difficult concepts, it's more keywords. If you learn what a keyword is, then you learn the industry much easier. Change of ownership for the tax assessor, it's time to reassess. That's all you have to remember, right? So, and are excluded from property tax assessment regardless of use, residential, vacation, rental, or business. So before, it didn't really matter. You pass it down, it's not reassessed. It didn't matter what it's for. So,
Paul, real quick, a couple people have asked questions. If you add a family member to the title, will that trigger a reassessment?
you know, this is kind of a big issue right now, right? Is that if I add somebody to title, is it a change of ownership? Is it a change of ownership? And I've seen it go both ways, meaning I've actually had clients come to me, say they've added it on, and now there's a reassessment. Now, you have to remember something. Okay, a change of, this word change of ownership and reassessment, you are allowed to dispute it. You know, a lot of people within, particularly the non-English speaking community, don't realize that there's an appeal process. So there are many, actually, and this is done mostly in West LA side. West LA people are very, very good about knowing about reassessment, knowing that they can be able to fight it. Where people over here, in terms of adding property names on, where there's a change of ownership, because essentially it is considered a change of ownership, right? Is that they don't understand that there's an appeal process that ends up occurring. So I don't want to let people feel, a reassessment is a dead end. I don't want people to feel that in any way. And in fact, I believe that since Jeffrey Prang, what ended up happening was, before Jeffrey Prang came on board, I'm just being very objective, I'm not taking any sides, is that there was a lot of fraudulent action that ended up occurring. I have Jeffrey's cell phone, I would text him, and Jeffrey would say, oh yeah, you know, you want the property to be reassessed? Reassessment can go up, it can also go down. So there were a lot of people contacting the tax assessor's office saying, hey bro, can you reassess my property? And the person would be like, yeah bro, don't worry about it, everything's gonna be okay. Jeffrey Prang and again, this is just my opinion, but I think I'm very firm ground, is that a majority of people feel that the tax assessor's office has become very, very objective. And the tax assessor's office has made the reassessment process much more transparent than it was before. So for those of you that get a reassessment and you feel that the reassessment is improper or that the numbers shouldn't be reassessed at that value, I do want you to know that a reassessment could actually go up, stay the same, and I've actually seen reassessments go down in a very transparent process. To answer your question, I don't mean to, I'm trying to fill in all these gaps as I speak, is that I've seen people come to my law office that have added a name on, and that is considered a change of ownership. Now, I don't necessarily, though, agree with that. But I've seen that type of case come in. I mean, does that help you? Because I think it's a real world example, is that somebody walks in and they say, hey, I got this. I just added my son's name on there. Why am I being reassessed? I actually think that that's wrong, that they got a reassessment. I don't necessarily think it's specifically the change of ownership. When the change of ownership on a reassessment, I think is very clear, is that when you sell a property to a third party, a change of ownership, that's very clear. That is very clear. Parents adding them on or putting them as joint tenants, I don't think needs to trigger a reassessment. And in fact, I think it's in line and in support with the prior goals of pre-Prop 19 of actually passing down property. However, with Proposition 19, what you need to be aware of, and I'm going to share with you the next one because I think I need to end because people are kind of not giving me the finger, but I have the feeling that we should finish. Okay, so very, very quickly, these are questions that I think that you should get answered because these are questions presented to me. Many of them were answered by Jeffrey Prang. Since the February deadline already passed, for homeowners who missed this opportunity, what could they do instead to minimize impact? 2, would property in an irrevocable trust that parents use as primary residence qualify under Proposition 19? Jeffrey answered that. Can property be transferred now from parent to child while the parents are still alive to avoid the property being reassessed when the child inherits the property and wants to keep it as a rental? He answered that too. Excuse me. Isn't it so funny? There was a period of time that when you saw someone cough on Zoom, you would actually back up. It's so funny. Okay, so if child is on title as joint tenancy with survivorship, is Proposition 19 relevant? If a transferor gifted a home to an adult child on the basis of tax-based transfer, does the transferee have to reside in the residence and may the transferor remain in the home? What do you see are the benefits of Proposition 19 to homeowners? Okay, very quickly.
So
Very
Paul,
quickly.
Paul, I
Okay.
think we're running out of time. So I don't know if you can put those in your presentation and answer them. We have 2 more people and I know you have to be in your other meeting. I think
Okay. All right.
you're
look,
fascinating.
Okay. Look, 1 minute. Very quickly. I think it's base value, how much you bought it for, plus $1 million. That's your excluded value. Okay, that's your excluded value. Jeffrey Prang said anything over $1 million, anything over $1 million, you're going to get dinged. I think it was the way he was presenting it, but I respectfully do not agree. I think he said it in a very generalized way. I've put in terms of the calculation here, somebody was nice enough earlier to affirm my thoughts and to give me a link. So these are the links that are in it. 1 minute. This is what I want to share. Okay, 1 minute. Let me disconnect. Okay. Yesterday, 144,000 masks came into my city and it was provided over to the school board. The school board member, there are many school board members that get up. One school board member got up to cry. She said, I cannot believe this is happening. Thank you so much. The people that gave were from the Asian community. Now, for those of you that have Asian people in your city during COVID, they keep on giving millions and millions and millions of masks. After, there were about 10 family members that got up after the school board member spoke. Some of them could not even speak English. Not even speak English. They just got up, said, I love America. Thank you so much. and they sat down. Why do I share that with you? Why do I share that with you? Because there is a tendency with all of the things that are going on over the last year and a half to only focus on race, But this is what I want to share with you. The school board members' tears are the same tears that you would cry. She was talking to people that may or may not have understood her, but they understood one thing, the tears that came out. And, I believe that the tears are kept in a jar that God has, all of our tears. And every once in a while, somebody takes that jar, pours it out for society to see, and unifies the community together. So I want to share that, is that I do understand that there is race sensitivity, particularly in California. It's not just over COVID. I do understand that there's been a lot of movements and a lot of things, and I'm really happy that people are standing up. But I really would like to encourage you to rally around things even more of caring for the first responders, caring for the elderly, giving back to your community with masks, because you don't need to speak English nor speak another language for people to love you. Because those 10 people that got up, they could barely speak English, but they wanted to communicate their love for America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We could easily spend 2 hours with you. We will have you back, and I appreciate everything.
Okay. All right, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. So Shun, we're ready for our second half of the panel discussion. Go ahead and please introduce.
Okay.
You're good?
Thank you, everyone. Yes, I am honored to introduce our next two guest speakers, Michael Cody, CPA, and Julie Tran, Government Affairs Director for the South Bay Association of Realtors. Mr. Michael Cody is a CPA tax preparer at Thomas J. Leib and Company. He is a registered IRS tax preparer with over 20 years of experience. He works with individuals as well as small and large businesses. Michael attended Whirlwind University, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in accounting, and most importantly, he earned his MBT in taxation from the University of Southern California. After Michael Cody's presentation, we are fortunate to have Ms. Julie Tran to be our next speaker. Julie graduated from University of California, Davis with a degree in political science. She joined the California Association of Realtors Government Affairs Field Representative since 2016, and now she is the Government Affairs Director at the South Bay Association of Realtors. Let's welcome Mr. Michael Cody and Julie Tran. We'll have Michael to start his presentation, followed by Julie Tran. Michael, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me, everybody? Just, all right, great.
Yes.
All right, good, thank you. So I'm going to talk about taxes now. So you guys already had an hour or so of Prop 19. So, all right, I'm going to talk two topics I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about potential Biden tax changes that are going to affect the real estate industry. And also I'm going to circle back in with Prop 19. Some of the stuff's already been covered, but I'm going to give you my spin on it. And that'll help you out. So we got 152 people on it right now. This number keeps dropping. I think everyone's going out to lunch, but we'll start seeing where it goes. So anyway, so we're going to talk about Biden potential tax changes. All right, so we know everything's been settled, election's been settled. We got the Senate, we got the House all figured out who the players are going to be. So we got to kind of remember for the next year or so that there's going to be a tax change. We got the stimulus bill, the spending bill last 2 weeks ago. Next thing is going to be a tax bill, which is going to happen likely in the fall. So you got to kind of remember the Democratic Party usually has typical themes, and they always use increase the taxes, increase, on higher wage earners. So on the screen here, you're seeing a summary of what kind of is going to be coming down the road here. You got increased payroll taxes on higher earners. If you're a real estate agent and you're currently a sole proprietor, you may want to start thinking about setting up an S corporation. If you talk to your accountant about the benefits of having an S corp as a realtor, you may see that. Increasing the higher tax brackets right now, we're at 37%. They want to bring up to 39. So that's going to capital gains. All right, real estate, when you sell something, you got to pay capital gains on it. They want to have a higher capital gains rate. They want to push it up to the ordinary rate of 39.6. Right now it's 24% about. So keep your ears on that. And also a lot of changes to the estate and gift tax world. I'll talk about them and give you my opinions on what I think is going to happen. And lastly, that's not going to affect a lot of people in this group, but it's going to affect your stocks. You know, increase the corporate tax rate, because remember, more taxes that corporations pay, that means less profit they make. Less profit means less valuable in the stock market. So, all right. So here's the 12 things that are likely or less likely, and then next slide, I'm going to narrow these down back into real estate specific. Okay. So increase tax bracket to 39.6%. Very likely that's going to happen. They're targeting people making over $400,000. So $400,000, is that a single person, a married couple? Is it a married couple? It's 800. We do not know yet. Again, we're still in this. It's kind of like a Christmas list. You know, we don't know what we're going to get yet until that day they pass it. You know, so a lot of unknowns out there. Higher taxes on large capital gains. That's likely going to happen, but it may only happen on people maybe with incomes over $1 million, we're hearing, or they may just make it up to 400,000. So we do not know yet. So you got to kind of look at yourself or your clients to say if they're going to liquidate something, when do you want to do it? We may be pushing deals in before 12/31 here, because if any changes do go through, it's probably not going to happen until January 1st of next year. So you got basically 9 months to kind of either work under these current rules or we're going to have new ones January 1st, 2022. Itemized deductions, we're all kind of familiar with this. When we do our taxes, we get to take deductions for charity, mortgage interest, and we get our 10 grand for state and income property taxes. Well, that may change. You know, they may take that away, not away, but they may reduce the benefit we're getting from itemized deductions, but we may even get back our state and local income taxes. That's very likely if they do put a cap of 28%. Again, keep your ear on that. So new tax on Social Security taxes. Yeah, if you're an employee, right now you only pay Social Security tax up to $127,000 your wages, and it stops. But now they want to have a donut hole and have it start again when your income's over 400,000. So if you're an employee, you got a large W-2, and you also have maybe stock options that are going, you are going to see an increase, and that's 6% increase, 6.2% tax that you would be paying on wages over $400,000. Another reason you may want to start thinking about going to an S corporation if you're sole proprietor, okay, if you can. Increase corporate tax rates, yeah, we're at 21%. The average world out there, every other country is about 24%. We all have little pluses and minuses, but we're a little below the rest of the world. 28% will kind of get us back to where they were thinking the economy could support a 28% corporate tax rate. That's going to change. I mean, if anything, that'll change. 1031 exchanges. All right, we'll talk about that on the next slide, go into more detail on that. Change in gift tax. Yeah, we're all familiar with giving money to our kids and people giving things like that. Property to their heirs. Yes, that's going to change. Again, next slide, I'll go on more. Step up basis. Yeah, this is a big one for everyone that has owned real estate or anything that owns a stock. That's likely going to change. Maybe not in different ways. I don't know. And if an accounting industry, we don't think it's going to change. I'll tell you why in the next slide. Increase in the estate tax. Yeah, I'll talk about that. Repeal of the Trump tax cuts under the TCJA, likely in parts. We don't think they can cut it all out. Most likely what's going to happen might look like Frankenstein afterwards. We're going to have the TCJA amended, with little things stuck around. And then, of course, you're already kind of seeing the bill that passed 2 weeks ago with some nice tax breaks, like increasing dependent care credits, increasing in child credits. These are all just really for 1 year, but if they passed a tax bill later in the fall, they would make them extend them out later. So a lot of the things that they passed two weeks ago are just for 2021, temporary. So they want to kind of get them. And there's also a talk about a first-time home buyer credit again. Remember this 12 years ago where everyone got a $5,000 credit? Well, there's another one out there that may come out. And then green energy tax changes. All right. So these are the things just for the real estate. So you guys got to start thinking if you have clients, first of all, you got to do is you got to get your team together. Tell your clients they got to get with their CPA, their attorney, their real estate agent, their appraiser, their insurance agent. You got to get everybody together. Something's going to change. And if this bill passes in the fall, we may only have 3 months before the end of the year to get going on changing or implementing things or moving, just like we did last year when we were all trying to get in for Prop 19 change on, February 12th. Everyone was running around trying to get stuff done. There's not enough lawyers in the world. I don't know, the joke that can handle all this, and there are not enough accountants in the world that can help with all this. I mean, I already got a good client list myself that I'm trying to help. Now, if I get a phone call every week, I just can't take it on. I mean, I can't do it. But you got to get your A team together. Talk to your kids. Talk to your parents. You may be inheriting things from your parents. You got to know what your parents are worth, what you may be getting. This is going to be huge. You really got to start thinking about, all right, on to my list. All right, so you got higher taxes on large capital gains. So if you've been having someone that's been thinking about selling some property and they've been kind of waiting, I don't know, I think I can get another 2%, 3%, it's going to grow. You may want to talk to them, because if that gain is over $1 million, it's probably going to be taxed at an ordinary rate of 39% versus a 24%. We're just talking about Fed now. We're not even adding state, right? So you could be almost 39% Fed plus a 3.8% Medicare surcharge, the Obama tax. That's almost 42%, and you add 13% state on top of that. So almost 55% on a piece of real estate that gets sold in 2022. So doesn't that make it sound like I maybe should sell something before December 31st? Yeah, it's going to put pressure on you, because also the buyer knows that, right? So if you have deals that are coming in at the end of the year, the buyer may say, well, I'm gonna push it out to January 1st, and they're like, no, I can't. You can't do that. Watch out. It's gonna might get a little sticky out there. 10th. Oh, sorry guys. You want to talk Prop 19 real quick again? Yeah, so 1031 exchanges. So we all know what a 1031 exchange is. We've probably sat through seminars as a realtor. I mean, it's like you sell your property, investment property, you defer the gain into the new property. Don't pay any tax. Beautiful. You didn't get any cash. Why would you pay any tax? They want to limit this. All right. There's talking about saying getting it rid of altogether. There's talk about putting on caps on values of property. So they may say once it gets to $1 million, you can't do a 1031 exchange. Everything below $1 million, we will still allow it. This is going to be huge, because again, it's going to put pressure on people to do deals by the end of the year. And like, say this passes in the fall, and someone's like, oh, I want to do a 1031 exchange now on October 1st. You got to kind of start having people already start thinking about, I may have to liquidate this at the end of the year. Anything else on 1031 exchange? I'm okay with that. Well, if some people don't think this is going to happen, we've already kind of lost some 1031 exchanges. On the TCJA, that was 3 years ago, we got rid of 1031 exchange for personal property. It used to be like in a business, if you had a car and you traded it in, that's technically a 1031 exchange still. It's not a piece of real estate, but it's a car. You traded in the car and took the gain and put it into a new car. They got rid of that. So now you pay tax on that. So there is thinking that they can figure this, how to do this, and it may go away. Estate taxes. So right now we're all kind of familiar with how you can die with well over $11 million of an estate and not pay any estate tax. $11 million is a very big number, and it goes up a little bit. It's like 11.7 now. That's per person. All right. So the proposal is to bring that down to 3.5. Okay. Now you start looking around, you're like, wow, people have real estate, they have retirement accounts. You get to 3.5 really quick. And then sometimes the things you don't even see in your bank account yet, you got a life insurance policy that pays $1 million benefit to your spouse. All of a sudden, a 3.5 is real quick. And remember, they were proposing anything over 3.5 is going to be taxed at a 45% estate tax. Yikes. So that's why I say you got to kind of talk to your parents. You got to talk to your kids. You got to tell your parents, hey, Dad, you got $9 million. Yes, he's like, one day you'll inherit it all. You're like, well, why don't you do something now? Maybe we can skip me and give it to my kids, set up a grandchildren trust, set up some dynasty trust for the kids and things, thinking ahead. Again, come January 1st next year, you're going to lose this ability because it's going to be $3.5 million of estate. But now you can maybe do things now. And that's where I bring number 4 here, reduction of the gift tax exclusion. Right now, the estate tax is 11.7 and the gift tax is 11.7. They're connected. So during your life, you can give away 11.7 as a gift. You can also die with 11.7. All right. They're connected. What they want to do, they want to change it. This is how it used to be years ago, like 20 years ago, the estate tax was higher than the gift tax. You can only gift away, like what they want to bring it down to is $1 million. So during your life, you can only gift away $1 million of property. Today, you can gift away 11 million. So if they bring it down to $1 million, that's going to prevent us doing transfers during your lifetime. We're kind of stuck with only maybe making transfers on death. So right now, take advantage of the 11 million, why it's high, right? So again, you got to get the team together. You got to start looking at assets. Again, talk to your parents. It's very important to see what their plan is. Maybe they don't have a plan, but if, I mean, 45%, I mean, if you want to pay the taxes, you know, you can. I mean, this is all going to the Fed. You're into the state tax, you know, it's not going to like our cities and stuff like that. It's going to the Fed. So number 5 is elimination of step-up basis on inherited assets. So when you buy something, say you buy a house for $350,000, you know, 20 years ago, it's now worth $1 million, you die. The day after you die, your heirs can sell it for $1 million and they don't pay any income tax because they get a stepped up basis on your date of death. They're thinking about getting rid of this stepped up basis. In the accounting industry, we think it's very unlikely. The reason being because it's an administrative nightmare. Because one, we would have to then start making up cost basis. We have no idea what things were bought for. Yeah, real estate, we can go back and maybe find a, you know, go look at title or go back and maybe find a purchase escrow, but the person died who even has all that paperwork. You got to find it in the house, you know, it's not going to happen. Think about stocks. Some people may have bought stocks in the 70s. They've owned it, it's split and merged. We would use that old cost basis from the 70s. From an accounting position, it's a nightmare. So a lot of us don't think that the elimination of the step up is going to happen. But you got to kind of, if that happens, you know, people got to start documenting what they paid for things, right? So again, you know, yeah, the elimination step up is one that kind of keeps me up at night, because I have, even when people die, we don't know what some stuff is worth. We have to really do some, you know, investigation to figure out what it is. Repeal the TCJ. Now I talked about getting rid of the Frankenstein, taking TCJ apart. Well, and the SALT limitation, we all remember this now, is that we used to be able to, as an itemized deduction, deduct all of our state income taxes, our property taxes on our residents, and it was all an itemized deduction. And then they came around with the SALT limitation and said, nah, we're going to only cap that at 10 grand. You're like, oh, 10 grand per person on married return? No, just 10 grand. So even it's a marriage penalty, like two people that are single, they each get 10 grand. The next day they get married. They each get 10 grand, so 20 if they're single, right? They get married, they get 10 grand as a joint married couple. It's a pure marriage penalty. So we may see, they're talking about repealing that. I mean, I think even if they don't do anything, they may double to at least you get 20 grand, you know, 10 for 10, right? 10 for each, 10 for a married couple. There's both sides, Republican and Democrats, are both supporting that. In the coastal states, you know, California, it's a nice thing to come home to your to your people, say, hey, I got you a 10 grand extra deduction, and you know, it just makes sense to do that. And then number 7 here, you got first time home buyer credit. All right, so the Vice President Harris, when she was when she was running for president, she had a nice agenda. What she was seeing, one of these things was this credit, like a first time home buyer's credit. And remember back 12 years ago, if you remember this, everyone got like a $5,000 first-time home buyer's credit. The part of it was where you got it up front, didn't have to repay it. Then there was a time where they said, it's like a loan. You got to pay $500 back over 10 years on your tax return. This new one they're talking about is giving you 15 grand for a first-time home buyer. 15 grand, and they're like, oh, that's great. Well, you know, normally when you get a credit, you got to file a tax return to get the credit. So you can buy a house today, and then you would, if this was on the books today, you would have to wait till April of next year to really get the credit, to feel the credit. Well, there's talk of them saying, no, we're going to try to push this through where you could actually apply it at the closing of the sale of the property. So it would kind of go towards your down payment. Now, that's kind of cool. I like that, because that means I got to come up with less cash. You know, if there's an issue with an appraisal, you know, this is extra money bringing in, you know, so something to really keep an eye out. So if you see something like that, these are all things you just got to keep back in your mind. I mean, a lot of stuff may not happen, but this is kind of the fear out there, or the things are going. That's what I got for Biden's things. So I'm going to jump into Prop 19 again, and I'll give you my spin on it, and you know how I've been promoting it to my clients, right? So everyone that spoke before gave you a good summary on it, you know. But remember, you know, the dates were February 15th of 2021. That was when, you know, the grandparent or the parent to child or grandparent child went into effect. Like we said, Senate Bill 668. I mean, Google it, you'll see it out there. It basically passed the state Senate 34-4. That's more than 2/3 support, right? I'm an accountant, but math isn't my thing, right? So but that's a 2/3 support in the Senate. So now it goes over to the Assembly, right? So now the Assembly's got to approve it. And if we get 2/3, good, right? There's a good push that this Senate bill will change your effective date from February 15th, 2021 to February 15th, 2023. All right, it hasn't passed yet. We don't know. All right, it's still going to, but there's a good chance that it will. All right, you got to keep an eye on this, because if this does pass, remember how we were all running around transferring properties into trust? Everyone was burned out by February 15th. We're like, there were people running to the, assessor's office, delivering paperwork, getting a stamp, hoping they got postmarked and everything. Whew. We may have that again, but at least we got 2 years to work on it. So keep an eye on that. This is important because there's a lot of people walking around with their team just lost the Super Bowl because they missed out on this, right? There's a good chance that we may get to do this again. So we're maybe doing some transfers to protect, properties. All right. So my version of the good stuff. All right. So again, Prop 19 allows you to basically 55 or older, allows you to move it 3 properties. Now, a lot of my client base are 55 or older, and they do move more than 3 times after they're 55. I see it happen, and it happens more times than you think. Change of lifestyle, change of arthritis medicine, or whatever. They want to be closer to their grandkids. They want to move. It does happen a lot. So Prop 19 allowing you to move this to 3 properties is very good, right? The good thing now is also we can move it to a more expensive property. I got a slide on, I'll show you on that and the math on that, how that works. That's huge because you never could do that before. We always had people, it always had to be, property less expensive. So now we got it, we can move it to more expensive one. Well, that's good. There's math you got to do to figure out what your assessment's going to be. So, all right, well, that's good. This makes more sense. And what else we got? Applies 55 or older. So we already covered that about 8 times today. So, and all counties apply. Before it was only a number of counties, but all counties apply. This is good because now it gives more people a chance to move around. And again, it's going to help the real estate market because this does create inventory. This is going to create people moving around. So you're going to have people, and I guarantee you there are people out there that do not know that Prop 19 exists. They may still be saying, oh, if I move, I'm going to have to pay higher property taxes. And they may be 55 or older. But so if you come across them, you got to educate them, right? We all want educated clients. There's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot you can Google a lot of this stuff. Yeah, you can Google anything and find an answer that you want to get in your head, but there's a lot of good you want. Just remind your clients, well, go to this website. And, the Board of Equalization has great stuff. I'll send you, again, I'll show you the link. It has great facts. It has great questions. It has all the releases that they're sending to the assessor's office. Like, it gives great examples. Anyway, so here's the example of one. Husband and wife buy a home in Torrance for $200,000 in the 80s. Now it's worth $1.2 million appreciation, right? Right now they're paying, to keep math simple, guys, I'm trying to do $5,000 a year in property taxes. They sell that Torrance home, they want to move to Sacramento, closer to daughter. All right, Sacramento's new house is $700,000 up there. Now, the new house, then they continue to pay that $5,000 a year in property taxes because they basically, it went down in value, and that's easy, very simple. That's how it was before, and it helps people move around. That's a picture of my old house down the street. And anyway, it was easier to clip art it. So here's another one. This is upgrading. So this is new for us. This is kind of like, oh, wow, we never had this chance before. So same couple bought the house in Torrance, for $2 million. Today it's worth 1.2, right? They pay $5,000 in property taxes, same thing. But now they say, honey, Torrance is just too far from the beach. You're kind of thinking, well, it's not that far, so, and they want to go down to Manhattan Beach. But the house down there, they can afford a 1-bedroom condo in Manhattan Beach for $3.2 million. It's a deal, right? So how it works now, they're going to get like a split property tax bill, right? So the first 1.2 million on the new home is going to be taxed at $5,000. That's their old base. Remember, they had it, and the next 2 million is going to be taxed at the current rates of $25,000 per year in property taxes. So if you look at this, the annual tax with Prop 19 is going to save them about $30,000. It costs them $30,000 a year. If they didn't have Prop 19, it would have been $40,000 a year. So that's a 10 grand savings per year. Okay, now we always kind of like to say, like, income taxes is death by one cut. Property taxes is death by thousands and thousands of cut, because property tax is an annual bill, right? So if this couple happens to be 55 and they say, I'm going to live in this house, this place in Manhattan Beach for 20 years, they just saved $200,000 of cost, by Prop 19. Sounds like a good thing to me, right? Yeah. I mean, we can all agree that is. But it also, you got to kind of talk to your buyers too, to remind them about this, because now they're able to say, all right, I'm going to pay 10 grand less in property taxes per year than the person next to them who may not be a 55 or older transferring a base. So that makes this house a little more affordable for the 55 or older. So it helps in your negotiation too, because maybe you actually may bump up the price a little. Say, I'll give you an extra 30 grand just because I know I'm going to save 10 grand in property taxes, or give or take. There's a little delta is going to change there, but you can kind of see what I'm saying. You got to kind of factor that into it. So yeah. So this another slide just talks about Karen. She's going to go from her primary residence in June of this year. And I don't want to go over that slide. It's just kind of a similar thing, but we got to kind of remember that there's a delta that you got to figure out on the new base. And like I said, they're going to put things on the assessor's website to help us figure this out. And again, there's a lot of tools. I mean, I'm actually impressed that they did pass this in November, but there's a lot of things out there that we're getting that's helping us on this. So bad stuff. All right. So we talked about, they covered some of the bad stuff. I'm going to go over it again because you got to kind of remember this. The parent-to-child, grandchild transfer is eliminated. So, this doesn't make much sense. We want to kind of pass this on to our properties onto our children and keep the base. It's only going to be there if the child makes that their principal residence. So what's the definition of their principal residence? And like we were speaking before about how people may have multiple residences, but usually what it means is that every year or every time you get a property, you get this form to fill out. It says, is this your primary residence? You fill out the form, you put your name on there, and you put your social security number. That goes back to the county, so that you tell the county that that's your principal residence. You can only have one of these residences that applies for this. Never get the $7,000 exclusion off your property tax base, because that's how they keep track of it. So that's how they're going to know if this new property that your kid is inheriting is going to be their principal residence. You got to fill out that form. Some clients get that form, they throw it out because they think it's garbage. Because usually when you buy a house, you also get these things in the mail. Hey, we'll record your deed for you, and it's from some company soliciting. So they kind of think that's the same thing, but no. So we got to kind of remind our clients, even houses that they planned to say it's their residence, they want to leave it to their kids. You want to make sure that the principal residence form is filed with the county, so it kind of notifies the county saying, hey, this is the parent's residence and it's going to the kids. So all right, so we got $1 million cap. So yeah, so the way I've been kind of explaining it to my clients to keep it simple, there's a delta. Like if you have $1.5 million property, you take $1 million off it, that could be the maximum amount of the property tax assessment. Property tax base could be $500,000 on your property. So $1.5 million less than $1 million is $500,000. Just keep it simple. There's a little bit of mechanics to it, but that's the quick conversation for people. And then, of course, the effective date of this was it February 16th? Is it going to be 2021, February 15th, 2023? You got to keep your eye out there. So more bad stuff here. So it guts it for rentals. All right. So we no longer have Prop 13. So if you own rental properties, you die, it's left to the kids, it's going to get reassessed. Not good. Okay. Commercial rentals. Again, you got a commercial property that you've been holding on for years and you're going to leave it to your kids, going to get reassessed. Your family vacation home or the cabin up in the mountains, that's going to get reassessed. So usually this property was a drain anyway on the family because you didn't really rent it out. It was always covering. You got property taxes, utility, you got snow removal. I mean, you live by the beach. We forget what snow looks like sometimes, but people in the mountains stuff, they got these homes. You got high insurance for areas that are in fire areas. So anyway, this is just going to add to your carrying cost of these vacation homes when someone passes away. But if this assembly bill, the state Senate bill passes and gets through assembly, and it pushes out to 2020, we're back in play here to maybe make these transfers now to protect that from happening. So, what can you do? All right. So, years ago, I mean, if Google this tonight when you're trying to go to bed, all right, Google the Michael Dell maneuver. All right, the Michael Dell maneuver basically was a deal where back in early 2000s, he was going to buy the Fairmont Miramar Hotel, right? And the idea, he was going to roll in there and he was going to buy the hotel, put it in his own LLC. But then the attorneys and the accountants, I think it was the accountant's idea, because that had to be a brilliant person to really think about this, so it's probably the accountant. Anyway, but they said, no, we don't want to buy the property itself. They're like, we want to buy the entity, all right? And how the property tax rules are written, like as long as no one gets more than a 50% control of the LLC or the entity that owns the property, there's not a reassessment. So you're like, wow, this is great, you know. In our world over here, we've been kind of doing this years with sales tax. Like if people own a boat or an airplane, we put it in an LLC or have the LLC buy it. That way, if they ever want to sell it, the next person that buys the LLC doesn't have to pay sales tax because they're just buying the LLC. They're not buying the actual the asset. So it's kind of attributable to that. So you got to kind of think about maybe when your people are selling a commercial property nowadays and it's an LLC, you may say, we don't want to buy the property, we want to buy the LLC that is owned in it. And then maybe you buy it and you break up the ownership where no one has more than 50% of that LLC after you acquire it. Might be something to think about. You know, I've been preaching to my clients. I haven't gotten it yet because again, these transactions come around when they do. But if you're looking, someone's to go and buy a property and it's owned in an LLC, you may say, no, we want to buy your LLC. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And again, you got to kind of just, it's a tool. It may work. So there's two kind of rules for, you can kind of take a picture of this, or, you know, this is kind of good summary. I found this back in a year or so ago, summarizing like the change of ownership rules for LLCs, right? There's a different rule if the LLC bought the property itself. I mean, the property was owned by the LLC from the beginning, or if there was a contribution of a property into the LLC, right? Two different transactions, right? So there's a change in control and a change in ownership, right? Change in control is when the LLC owns the property from the beginning and no one owns more than 50%. There's different rules there. Change in ownership is basically if the property was owned tenant in common and then it was contributed to an LLC. There's kind of like a cumulative thing we got to watch. If there's ever more than a 50% change, it's going to get reassessed. So yeah, this is, you know, you got to kind of, I got some examples coming up and it'll kind of maybe help explain this a little more. But so you got a rental property, purchase an LLC, right? So you and your spouse purchase a rental in LLC and rent it out. It's owned in the LLC from the start, right? Now the home was worth $3 million, right? So what you do is you're basically going to give each of your kid a third interest in the LLC. There's no change in ownership, so it won't get reassessed because no one got more than a 50% control in the LLC. But again, the entity must have been, the property must have been acquired in the LLC for this to really to work. So you can't take your property owned tenant in common and then put it into an LLC. You can do it, but there will be a change once there's more than a cumulative change. But this is the ideal situation that you guys start thinking about now when you're buying real estate for property tax purpose. I had this came up, I don't know, 2 weeks ago with a client, and they were like, "Oh yeah, how can we do anything for tax structure?" I'm like, "Well, you can do this," and they're like, "Oh, we plan to sell it in 2 years anyway." Well, if you're going to plan to sell it in 2 years, you don't need to do this because remember, property taxes is something you want to kind of protect for a long time. If you're going to buy something and you think you're going to probably, sell it, but then again, you go back on that. Maybe you want to put in LLC so the buyer that comes in, like I talked before, he'll buy your LLC from you, and because he can structure where there's not going to be a change. So again, it's going to give you some more planning opportunities here. So looks like we got 131 participants. I only lost 10 or 12 people. It's pretty good. Not bad. So, yeah.
Mike, a couple of people have to jump off at one.
Okay.
That are asking
I'm
questions.
close. Yeah, I'm close. I got 3 slides left, and
okay, excellent.
Yeah, you're good. So yeah, so here's another good example of it. But now you basically say you want to kind of give your son 48%, your daughter-in-law 48%, then your grandkids 4%. Again, no one gets more than 50%, and we're good. So I just kind of a different way. Again, the Dell maneuver, fun reading there, guys. So, and then this was what I was talking about before, where you own it in tenant common interest. So let's say you're 50-50 with Ken and Ben are 50-50 in a tenant common. They each own a property in Redondo. They transferred a property into an LLC. They call it KB LLC, and I'm sure that name's already taken, but anyway, KB LLC, now they're 50-50 owners of the LLC. No change in ownership because this is something called a transfer in proportional ownership. What that means is that your ownership is the same after you put it into an entity. You get this with trust too. When you put the property in trust, there's no change in ownership really in a revocable trust because you still own 50% or your ownership's still the same, right? since they're original co-owners, we get this cumulative change rule we got to watch, right? So one day Ken says, I'm going to transfer 30% to his son. The membership interest, remember the property's in an LLC now. He's not transferring the property, he's transferring the LLC interest, right? So he transfers 30% of his interest to his son, and then Ben transfers 25% to his daughter. You're like, oh, okay. No one's got more than 50%, Mike. I'm like, yeah, but this cumulative thing kicks in, right? So once there's been a more than a 50% change of the original co-owners, the thing's going to get reassessed. So that's where you got to watch out for. That's why clients are like, oh, my property's in LLC. Then we go back and find out that they bought it in their own name or in their trust and contributed to an LLC. So you got to kind of watch this, and it takes a little inspection. That's why I let the attorneys pull the reports on it and, kind of be detailed. So, all right, the Board of Equalization has a really good website on things that, a lot of the questions you guys are asking in the chat here, there's actually kind of already been guidance that's been given. On the frequently asked section, they have questions in here that are really kind of specific, that really kind of focus on what our unknowns were. There's also, I'll pull it up real quick so you can see it. There's also been letters to the assessors. Okay, there's been letters to the assessors giving them instructions on how the Board of Equalization interpret. This is good. This is all the guidance we got now. You can't wait to do a real estate deal. You got to go with the guidance you got. So this is a really good website. And there's a lot of good stuff on there. When I get stumped, I come here and I kind of pull open they have good examples in here of saying what's going to happen. I would say use that, and go in there and see if you can find something, because that's again, that's going to be your saving point. And then yeah, I mean, basically the one question I had the past couple of weeks was, hey, when do I need to close on this property? And in the BOA gave examples, you didn't have to close after April 1st, because we know now it's the 55 or older. We were thinking, do we have to have both properties closed after April 1st? No. Like example 5 down here says, this is the date's wrong, actually March 1st, 2021. It basically, just as long as one of the properties closes after April 1st, you can transfer your base into the new one. So that's really good if you're 55 or older. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got. So,
So awesome job. Like Paul, we could easily spend 2 hours with you. We'll have to have you back on. I think you answered most of the questions, and I think people have to go at once. So we're gonna have Shun introduce Julie, and if anyone wants to email Mike and you have additional questions, that's fine, or me or Nikki. You have all our information in the chat box. So Michael, thank you very much. That was awesome. Shun?
Okay, I thought I introduced Julie earlier, but let me introduce her again. We're very lucky to have Julie Tran to be our next speakers. Julie has graduated from University of California, Davis, with degree in political science. She joined the California Association of Realtor Government Affairs Field Representative since 2016, and now she is the Government Affairs Director at the South Bay Association of Realtors. Thank you, and let's welcome Julie Tran.
Thank you, everyone. Happy almost lunch. I'm sorry that we are running a little behind schedule, but I will keep my presentation very short. I want to make sure that we have additional resources too. So I'm going to drop this in the chat even before I speak. So I was asked to kind of give background on why CAR sponsored Prop 19, what we know as Prop 19, to be on the ballot, because as we're out there as realtors, right, people are in our community are going to be asking us, well, why did this happen? Why did the realtors in California want this to happen? How is it going to affect us? And so really the short answer to that is inventory. Okay, in California, we have seen restrictive inventory coupled with the lack of people selling their house over the past 2 decades. And there has been a lot of studies. Actually, I'll just point to the Legislative Analyst Office. They actually were the ones who got the ball started on the whole inheritance transfer reform back in 2017 with a report that they did, which said to the state legislature, and remember, the Legislative Analyst Office is very objective. Paul has mentioned it. They do fiscal analysis of existing laws and give guidance to the legislature as to how to act. And so what they said was, if we were really looking at Prop 58 and Prop 93, which was the current grandchild inheritance laws that got reformed, if we were looking at that as a way to keep family homes in the family, it has not been working that way. And it has really gone to benefit families who have been able to hold rental property in their families for multiple generations, therefore holding back property tax revenues from cities and states to the tune of $70 billion per year in California. And so what happened at the California legislature was people jumped on this. Our state senator up in the Valley, Senator Hill actually introduced a bill to do this very thing by itself. So Senator Hill introduced SCA 3 back in 2018 in order to just remove the parent to child, grandparent to child inheritance transfer. And that was going to go on the ballot as well. What CAR did at that point was, after failing to pass Prop 5, if any of you remember Prop 5, we were trying to just do the senior transfer, the senior expansion of their tax portability. It failed to pass because California firefighters and California teachers got up in arms about the projected loss of revenue. And they said, we're going to knock doors against realtors in California if you stick with Prop 5 and you try to get Prop 5 on to pass. And so they did very little advertising. Prop 5 did not pass. And that's why it was back in the form of Prop 19. So CAR said, well, okay, we like the senior transfer part. Why don't we couple that with the inheritance part? Both of which will raise the number of transactions in the state of California by over 150,000 additional transactions per year. To give background, in California, we're bubbling around 400,000 transactions per year. Divide that between 200,000 realtors, how much business is there really to go around? So CAR saw that as kind of a priority, not to only help our industry, but to help the fluidity and the flow of houses and transactions in the state. So there's the background, right? But what we really need to remember too, and this is, I think, was glossed over a little bit, is Prop 19 was done in conjunction with the California Professional Firefighters Association. And so for the first time ever, we have created a permanent revenue stream for firefighters, for underfunded fire districts in California. It may not seem like a big deal right now, but when we get back into the 6-month-long fire season in California, and cities are saying they're not getting adequate response because their fire districts are underfunded, this is what will make the difference. So the Bates bill, I want to get back to the SB 668, the Bates bill that is proposing to move the implementation date of the inheritance part to 2023. There are many points I want to bring up with that, because first of all, you can't actually do a constitutional change with a statutory bill, with a Senate bill. And so the constitutionality of the bill is already being questioned, and there's no expectation that it will pass the assembly, and it does require a governor's signature, even if they determine that it is a constitutional bill. We should not be expecting that bill to take effect, because if you wanted to change the California state constitution, that would have to go back to the will of the voters, and not also as realtors, we should not be out there saying, well, we're going to rescind this part of Prop 19, which is the part that the Firefighters Association got on board to support, because for the first time it created this permanent revenue stream for them. So very complicated situation. I know the bill is not perfect, and the legislature is working on a number of corrections to it. They're working on a bill to give tax assessors the ability to actually do regulatory changes to it. And that's why Assessor Prang is really pushing for SB 539 to pass, because that would give him that authority. And so it's a moving target. I also put in the chat a link to register for a April 5th Prop 19 update. And this is going to be from a CAR attorney, as well as a government affairs representative from CAR. And they're going to talk about what has taken effect and what may also change as the cleanup legislation goes through the state legislature. I believe that is what I wanted to touch on today. If there are any questions, you can also email me.
Julie, that was awesome. I think you answered all the questions I had. I want to thank everyone for participating today. Sorry we could not get to all the questions. You can either email to any of the panelists or me or Nikki. It was a lot of awesome information. Too much to go over, I guess, in an hour and a half. We ran over a half an hour, but I appreciate it. And I know that Zoom meeting that Julie posted, these guys are really funny, and they present the information where it's understandable, and they may answer some of the questions that haven't been answered. So thank you all very much. Have a great day, and we look forward to any additional questions. Anyone else have anything? You guys are good?
Thank you, David, for putting this on. Appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me and Shun to co-host.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for being patient.
Thank you for your
Yeah, everyone.
partnership.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everyone.